Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve. Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Comedy this hour with the 1939 episode of The Adventures of the Aldrich Family and an episode of a crime show, I Was a Convict, from 1946, and, of course, an episode of Lum and Abner. That's all coming up on this Tuesday. This is the 17th day of October, 290th day of the year. We have 75 days left until we get to 2024. German astronomer Johann Kepler observed on this date in 1604 an exceptionally bright star had suddenly appeared in the constellation Ophiuchus, which turned out to be the last supernova to have been observed in our own galaxy, the Milky Way. American troops defeated the British on this date in 1777 in the Battle of Saratoga. In 1888, Thomas Edison filed a patent for the optical phonograph, the very first movie. First published on this date in 1888, National Geographic magazine. Written by Elmer Bernstein, that fanfare used on many of the National Geographic television specials. Al Capone convicted on this date in 1931 of income tax evasion. 1933, Albert Einstein, fleeing Nazi Germany, came to the U.S. In 1937, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, Donald Duck's three almost identical nephews, first appeared in a newspaper comic strip. The 1964-65 New York World's Fair closed on this date in 1965 after a 2-year run. More than 51 million people had attended the event. It was on this date in 1967 the musical Hair opened at the Ansbacher Theater on Broadway. In 1973, OPEC began an oil embargo against a number of Western countries considered to have helped Israel in its war against Syria. In 1979, Mother Teresa awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
We deal with people that are the sick and the hungry and the naked and the homeless. We take Jesus at his word because Jesus had said, I was hungry, I was naked, I was homeless. And we try to just make a home for the homeless by giving a shelter to the people who are in the streets or unwanted.
Mother Teresa made a saint on September 4th, 2016, and the anniversary of her death, September 5th, made a feast day in the Catholic Church. 1979, the Department of Education Organization Act signed into law, creating the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Both replaced the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. It was on this date in 1986, Thomas P. O'Neill, Tip O'Neill, bid farewell to Congress.
What am I proud of most of all? I've seen America change. I've seen middle America, middle class develop. I've seen the American dream come true, and I've played a part of it. That's what I'm proud of.
Tip O'Neill spent 34 years in Congress, 10 as Speaker of the House, 50 in politics. He passed away in January of 1994 at the age of 83. In 1989, the Loma Prieta earthquake, 7.1 on the Richter scale, hit the San Francisco Bay Area.
Candy Maldonado with the hesitation, allowing Jose Canseco to score, and he fails to get Dave Parker at second base, so the Oakland A's take a 2-1
I'll tell you what, we're having an earthquake.
Al Michaels and Tim McCarver covering Game 3 of the World Series. It became the first earthquake televised live nationally. I remember that date very well. At the time, I owned a radio station in the Panhandle of Florida and had just finished up setting everything up for the evening and programming our commercials in and all of the things that needed to be done. Turned around and went to my little room where I lived at the time, just off the radio station. And I turned on the television thinking I'd watch a little of the World Series. I thought it was strange that there was a broadcast of Roseanne on the air. And it wasn't until later that I found out that what had happened with the earthquake. I went into our radio station immediately, changed up our programming, ran earthquake bulletins and earthquake updates all night long, not by me, but by our national network, which was ABC. And we broadcast those all night long because it was an interesting and exciting story. 7.1 earthquake on this date in 1989. On this date in 2005, Saddam Hussein went on trial in Baghdad for crimes against humanity. Among those passing on this date in history, the wonderful Tennessee Ernie Ford. You load 16 tons, what do you get? What a man. A very funny Joey Bishop passing away on this date in history. Also, Teresa Brewer. Music. Put another nickel in. Levi Stubbs of the Four Tops. The composer did Green Acres, Addams Family, Vic Mizzy passing away on this date. Mr. C on Happy Days, Tom Bosley passing away. Mike Graham, pro wrestler, whose family ran the the Florida territories for years. And singer, actor, skier Noel Harrison, all passing away on this date in history. The star of the television show December Bride, Spring Byington, born on this date, as was Granny Clampett, Irene Ryan. Y'all remember her from that. She did a lot of great radio, though. Pope John Paul I, born on this date, as was the co-creator of Superman, Jerry Siegel, playwright Arthur Miller, actress Marcia Hunt, actress Rita Hayworth, actor Montgomery Clift, the very funny Tom Poston, who probably his best-known stuff on television. He was a panelist on I've Got a Secret. He was also on the Steve Allen Show and also on Newhart. Tom Poston, born on this date. Nutritionist Robert Atkins, born on this date, as was Daredevil Evel Knievel. Country's Earl Thomas Conley. Jim Seals of Seals and Croft, actress Margot Kidder, and Saturday Night Live comedian Norm Macdonald. Turning 81 today, the man behind Young Girl and Lady Willpower, Gary Puckett of Gary Puckett and the Union Gap, 81 years old. He was Lenny on Laverne and Shirley, also the lead vocalist of Spinal Tap in the movie of the same name, and Chuck McGill on Better Call Saul. Actor, comedian Michael McKeon, 76 today. Norm on Cheers, George Wendt, is 75. The first African-American woman to journey into space, Mae Jemison, is 67. Country singer Alan Jackson, 65. The man behind Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill, Mike Judge, 61. Haitian-born singer Wyclef Jean is 54. Rapper Eminem is 51. From The Theory of Everything and Star Wars Rogue One, Felicity Jones, 40. And from Red Riding Hood and Bitter Harvest, Max Irons is 38. Those just a few of the people who celebrate the 17th day of October as their birthday. And if this happens to be your birthday...
Hi,
We're the four freshmen, and we just want to say, Happy birthday to you.
And we'll start off with comedy from October 17th, 1939, The Aldrich Family. That's up next here on this Tuesday Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.
Ladies, there's one war job that you and only you can do. I mean the saving of waste fats and oils. Every drop of used fat is vitally needed for military medicines and supplies, and for supplies on the home front, such as fabrics, paints, and soaps. That fat has to come from your kitchen. Don't fall down on your war job. Save all used fats in a clean can, and the minute the can is full, take it right down to your butcher. He'll pay you 4 cents plus 2 red ration points for every pound you turn in.
You know, there are people today who say we did not save fats and did not reuse aluminum foil. Well, these people don't know what they're talking about. They don't at all. They're morons. Okay, on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, an episode of The Aldrich Family. And the whole Aldrich Family came out of Clipper Goldsmith's play, What a Life. It was produced and directed by George Abbott on Broadway, ran for 538 performances. And while Eddie Bracken, Betty Field, Butterfly McQueen in it, the actor who brought Henry to life on stage was Ezra Stone, who was billed near the bottom as the 20th actor in the cast. He was also the play's production assistant. And here's what Time magazine had to say about the play. Chief amusement centers in Henry Aldrich, a cross between Penrod and Willie Baxter, who attends classes mainly in the principal's office, with a talent for head-on collisions, always ingenious, never crafty, always there with an answer, never with the right one. Brash, bouncy, rumpled, rattled, rueful by turns, Henry grows into that rare thing on the stage, a person. Rudy Valley asked Clifford Goldsmith to adapt it into some sketches for his radio program, and that was followed in 1938 by a 39-week run of a sketch comedy series on the Kate Smith Hour, with Stone continuing in the role of Henry. Smith's director Bob Welsh credited with the creation of the Henry Aldrich, which eventually became one of the most famous signature sounds in radio. Aldrich Family launched into its own series as a summer replacement for Jack Benny in NBC's Sunday night lineup. I think you've heard us do Jack, very upset that a comedy was taking his place in that summer of 1939. And it moved to Tuesday nights at 8, sponsored by Jell-O, which also sponsored Jack Benny at the time. And now you're going to hear one of those episodes from October 17th, 1939, 84 years ago, The Aldrich Family.
Henry Aldrich! Coming, Mother!
The Aldrich Family, written by Clifford Goldsmith, featuring the Broadway stars Ezra Stone and this week's special guest, Betty Field. Brought to you by Jell-O Puddings, those delicious new desserts all America's talking about. The Aldrich Family arrived on Broadway this week in the hilarious, successful Paramount picture, What a Life. It's truly a four-bell movie, and we urge you all to see it. Tonight, we are pleased to present one of the stars of the motion picture, Miss Betty Field, who will play Barbara Pearson, Henry's sweetheart. As usual, the part of Henry Aldrich is played by Ezra Stone. The scene opens in Barbara's home. It is early evening.
Grandma? Grandmother?
What'll you have, Barbara?
Henry Aldrich hasn't come yet, has he?
Just a minute, and I'll ask your father.
No, he hasn't, Barbara.
First time this week he hasn't been here.
Father, could you come here a minute?
Where are you?
I'm here in the front hall.
Well, what is it this time, Barbara?
Now listen, Father. Yeah. I don't want Grandmother to hear me.
Why don't you want me to?
Oh, no reason. Father,
Yes?
when Henry comes, would you do something for me?
Well, what is it?
I know it's awful, but I've got it all planned. I found out today Henry is saying an awful lot of Constance Marshall.
Who told you?
Constance herself did.
I see.
But, Father, I've even seen them together.
Charles, where's that box of candy we had around here last night?
I haven't any idea.
Father, when Henry does come, would you mind stepping into the room just once or twice and saying George Bigelow wants to speak to me on the telephone?
Well,
You will, Father, won't you?
I'm just a bit surprised, Barbara.
Father, it wouldn't be so terrible, would it? Don't you think I'm human?
Barbara, I still think it'd be much better if you got your grandmother mixed up in this.
But, Daddy, Grandmother wouldn't approve of it. You know she wouldn't.
And exactly what makes you think I do?
It's for Henry's own good, Father. Constance Marshall is so silly.
Barbara, young ladies don't go about deliberately making young men jealous.
Oh, but they do. I beg to differ with you.
Well, sir, I'd give my eye teeth for a piece of that candy. Still had my eye teeth. Charles, somebody's at the front door.
Please say yes, Father.
Well, I'll think it over.
That's practically yes. Tell Henry I'll be right down.
Well, how do you do, young man?
How do you do, Mr. Pearson? How are you this evening?
Splendid.
And, how is Mrs. Sanderson?
She's splendid.
No, she's not either. My digestion's terrible.
Is that you in there, Mrs. Sanderson?
Charles, tell Barbara Henry's here. I've been asking all evening where Henry is.
Has she?
No, I haven't either, Grandmother.
I had to stop for a second and see somebody on the way over, Barbara.
Oh.
Oh, do you want to put your hat in that package down?
I'll put my hat down, but I think I'll keep the package.
Don't you trust us, Henry?
Oh, I don't mind holding it. It only weighs 2 pounds.
What's in it?
Oh, just a little something. Well, Mr. Pearson, how do you find business?
Very good, Henry.
You know, my father was saying...
Will you excuse me just a moment, Henry?
That's all right.
Henry, I went over to my doctor's today.
Is that right?
And I can't eat one blessed thing.
Is that right?
And I can't remember when I went to sleep last.
Hello, Henry.
Hello.
Well,
Here's a package for you. Be careful when you take it. It weighs 2 pounds.
oh, you shouldn't have done this, Henry.
Well, aren't you going to open it?
All right. Who did you drop in to see on your way over, Henry?
Nobody in particular.
It wasn't Constance Marshall, was it?
Oh, all she wanted me to do is drop in and say hello.
Oh. She's a nice girl.
Barbara,
Yes, Father?
you're wanted on the telephone.
Who is it?
It sounded like George Bigelow.
George Bigelow? Again? Oh. Will you excuse me, Henry?
Sure.
You mean you're going without opening it?
I'll be right back.
Certainly strange. I didn't hear that phone ring.
Mrs. Sanderson, did Mr. Pearson say George Bigelow?
He did.
George Bigelow. Tell me, what do you honestly think of George?
I'll tell you the truth, I don't think of him at all.
Oh.
What do you think of him?
Oh, you can't get me to say anything against him.
Very honorable of you. You know, I said to Barbara only the other day, young lady, I said, I hope you appreciate what kind of a young man Henry Aldrich really is.
Is that right?
Oh, my, yes.
And what did she say?
I forget now.
Oh.
Well, I certainly hope George doesn't call again.
George fine?
He's very fine.
Glad to hear that.
I certainly wish I could say as much about myself.
Don't you think you'd feel better if you went up to bed, Grandmother?
When you going to open that candy?
I'm opening it. Candy, Grandmother?
Well, just 2.
Candy, Henry?
Oh, I didn't even know you were there. Thank you.
Very good. Even if they do have enough.
Shall we step out onto the front porch, Barbara?
No, don't go out there and catch pneumonia, right? To prime your lives.
Well, couldn't Barbara put on a coat, maybe?
Oh, Barbara,
Yes, Father?
telephone. I think it's George Bigelow again.
My goodness. I guess he just thinks I don't have anything else to do. Excuse me, Henry.
I must be getting deaf. Henry, do you hear any phone ring?
No, ma'am.
What's the matter with you?
With I?
There it is. Don't you do something about it?
Well, what is there I can do?
What's worth having? It's worth having, ain't it?
You mean I ought to pound the daylights out of George?
Well, either out of him or out of Barbara.
How?
Well, anything you can lay your hands on. That reminds me. Hand me that candy.
But gee, if Barbara likes George, I don't see how socking him is going to help any.
It'll certainly make you feel better, won't it?
Even if he's older than I am?
Listen, young man. I used to be as pretty as any of them in my day, and I know all the tricks of the trade.
Yeah, did you used to fight?
When the occasion demanded it, yes. Hey, are these all caramels?
No, ma'am.
Now, let me tell you something. If you want to make her sit up and take notice, only way to do is to make her jealous.
You mean when she comes into the room, I don't pay any attention to her? I just sit and talk to you.
Well, is that the way they do it in the movies?
You mean I should make her think I like somebody else?
No, I'm telling you. Not as a grandmother, but as one soldier to another. Get busy and get busy quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Here. Want to eat the half of this one? It's got nuts in it.
My goodness. George Bigelow. He wants to give me his class pin. Can you imagine such a thing?
Well, I'm late as it is.
Where are you going?
No place. I just told Connie when I dropped in I'd be right back.
Oh. I'm sorry I didn't tell George he could come over.
No, why don't you call him back?
Well, of course. Maybe I will.
If his phone ain't wore out.
Henry, what's that you're putting on the lapel of your coat?
Oh, nothing. Just a pin of Connie she asked me to wear.
Where'd she get it?
Her mother had it first. It's an old family heirloom.
Let me see what it says. Vote the Democratic ticket.
Yeah, the whole family comes from a long line of Democrats.
Oh. I'm sorry you have to go, Henry.
Well, maybe I can stay.
I'm telling you, Henry Aldrich, you're making the mistake of your life.
But, well...
But, Grandmother, I don't think we should force him to go.
Henry?
Well, I guess I have to go, Barbara. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I don't suppose we'll see very much of you from now on, will we?
Why not? Oh, yeah. I guess as time goes on, you won't. Well...
Barbara, you're wanted on the telephone.
Who is it?
You better go to George.
It's Constance Marshall. She's over at somebody's house and wants you to come over.
Is that right?
Oh. I'll answer it in just a minute.
Who is this Constance Marshall?
Constance Marshall is nothing but an NTS.
What's an NTS?
NTS is necktie straightener. Every boy she meets, she has to straighten right away.
Charles, who is Constance Marshall?
Constance Marshall's father is one of the most active Republicans in this state.
Is that right?
I think I'll be going.
I know what you're going to do, Henry Aldrich. You're not going to Connie's house at all.
But I am.
Oh, no, you aren't. You're really going to some other girl's house. I hope whoever she is, you have an awful time there.
But listen...
No, I won't. I hate you, Henry Aldrich.
Young man, get out of this house.
But Mrs. Sanderson...
And don't you ever darken this doorway again. With chocolates filled with nuts and raisins. Get out!
Yes, ma'am. Hiya, Constance.
Where are you going?
No place, just to the grocery store.
Henry Aldrich, look at your necktie.
I know it's crooked. I wear my tie like that purposely.
Please let Constance help you.
Not so tight. Do you want to strangle me?
How do you do, Henry Aldrich?
Oh, how do you do, Mrs. Sanderson?
How do you do, Mrs. Sanderson?
How do you do, young lady?
Where are you going?
I'm going to the doctor's.
Would you like to have me walk along part way with you?
Oh, do you have to go now, Henry?
Gee, I'm late as it is.
I'll tell you what I wish you'd do, Henry. Stay right where you are.
Here?
Yes, sir. Barba'll be along just a minute or so. Wish you'd tell her where I've gone.
But my mother's waiting for the groceries.
Do you want Barbara to walk the streets of this town looking for me? Now, you stay right here, as I tell you to. And you, young lady, you stay here and see he does.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Sanderson.
And you tell her if I'm out at the doctor's, I'll be right across the street from there getting a bag of candy.
Henry Aldrich, look at your hair.
Listen, Constance.
You know, you could be one of the cutest boys I've ever known.
Cute? I'm cute? How do you think I'm cute?
Oh, Henry, you've got the cutest lock of hair right up there.
What's the matter with it?
Every time I push it down, it goes right up. Oh, look at it. Down, up, down, up.
How do you do, Henry?
Where did you come from, Barbara?
No place.
Your grandmother wanted me to tell you she's gone to the doctor's.
I know where she is.
Oh, well, what did she want us to wait here and tell you for?
I should like to add, Henry Aldrich, that you are certainly making a spectacle of yourself out here in the street.
I am?
No self-respecting person would have his hair combed by a girl right out in public.
Listen, Barbara, I'll have you know I'll have my hair combed wherever I want.
And what George Bigelow said about you is absolutely true.
What'd he say about me?
Never mind. He said... I hope sometime he tells you what he said.
Well, what do you know about that? Gee whiz, anybody'd think I'd struck her.
Henry, if I were you, I'd never speak to her again.
Well, I hope you don't think I'm going to speak to her again.
Henry, would you like to come over to my house tonight?
Gee whiz, I'd be glad to.
Mm.
I'd be glad to. I think it would do me good.
I'll tell you.
Now, before Henry Aldrich comes back, I want to say that if you happen to have an active, growing boy in your family, I know one thing. I know that you're kept plenty busy feeding that boy, because youngsters that age are always hungry, always on the lookout for something good to eat. Well, now, here's a dessert that every boy, and girl too, will say is a real smoothie. The new Jell-O butterscotch pudding. It has a swell, tempting color like gold-colored taffy. It's smooth and luscious, and it just can't be beat for real flavor. As rich and delicious as old-fashioned butterscotch candy. Jell-O butterscotch puddings bring you real, downright homemade goodness. And best of all, it's quick and easy to make. It takes you only a few minutes, there's no fuss or trouble, you just can't go wrong. Then try Jell-O chocolate pudding, with that wonderful real chocolate goodness, smooth and satisfying. And Jell-O vanilla pudding, cream-colored and tempting, with nuts or fruits folded in to make it even more delicious. All three new Jell-O puddings have that homemade richness you love. So try them all. Ask your grocer tomorrow for Jell-O butterscotch, chocolate, and vanilla pudding. Back at the Aldrich home, we find the whole family seated at the breakfast table. Everyone, that is, except Henry.
Henry! Mary, do you know whether Henry's up yet?
He said he was getting up the first time you called.
Father!
What is it?
Father, will you please tell Mary that if she sees Connie Marshall go by, to flag her?
Aren't you all dressed yet, Henry?
Practically, Mother.
My goodness, all Henry can think about is Constance Marshall.
How is it he never sees Barbara Pearson anymore?
Her grandmother won't let him near the house.
What's the trouble?
I don't know, except she said something about his going too far over something. And did I tell you about the picture I found under Henry's pillow?
Of whom? Barbara's grandmother?
Of Connie Marshall. And down in the corner it said, Constance to others, but constantly to Henry. Doesn't that make you positively ill, Mother?
Please pass the salt.
This whole business is something I shall never understand.
Oh, forget it. By next week, he'll be over the whole thing.
Mother!
Yes, Henry?
Have you any idea where my trousers might be?
I thought you were all dressed.
I am, Father. All but my trousers. They seem to be missing.
Where did you wear them last?
I think it was when I went to the movies.
Don't tell me you left your trousers at the movies.
Wear your brown trousers, dear.
My brown trousers? But Mother, Connie doesn't like those.
She even tells him what clothes to wear. The next thing you know, they'll be announcing their engagement.
It may be of interest for you to know that this is not one bit funny.
But, Mother, I think it would be all right with Constance.
How do you know?
I heard her tell Henry only the other day that she believes in long engagements.
Well, this would have to be a good long one, because Henry still has a year and a half of high school and 6 years of college before he even begins to practice law.
She may even talk him out of becoming a lawyer.
Mary, you certainly are cheerful this morning.
Mother, look out through the window. Look at what I see.
Constance Marshall.
Constance Marshall?
She even comes here for breakfast now.
Well, they selected a very excellent name for that child.
Hello, Mary.
Hello.
I wondered whether you'd like to have me walk to school with you.
Come on in, Constance.
I guess you know my father, don't you?
How do you do?
How do you do?
My goodness, Mr. Aldrich, you look like Henry.
I?
Only, of course, an awful lot older.
Yes.
Shall we start now, Constance?
Has Henry left yet?
Not yet.
Where is he?
We have no idea where he is.
You mean, Mr. Aldrich, Henry has left home?
Apparently he has.
Constance, Henry's upstairs.
We only think he's upstairs. No one in the family has seen him. We have simply heard sounds that might have come from Henry.
Henry? Henry?
You see? What did I tell you?
Is somebody calling me?
There's somebody down here to see you.
Who is it, Mother?
Oh, somebody.
You mean to see me?
Yes.
Oh, I know who it is. It's Stinky Cameron. Hi, Stinky.
Henry.
I'll be down just as soon as I find my pants.
Henry, it's not Stinky, and even if it were, I don't think you should call him that.
He doesn't mind. Do you, Stinky?
Henry?
Father Tom, to come on up and help me find my pants.
Henry, you're disgracing the entire family.
In fact, it might interest you to know that Constance is down here.
Yeah? So's General Grant.
Hello, Henry.
Well, gee whiz, where did you come from, Connie?
Home.
Well, why didn't anybody tell me? I'll be right down.
Henry, have you got your trousers on?
Oh, no, I'm glad you spoke about that. Excuse me.
You better be starting, Constance.
Oh, we've got loads of time, Mary.
Not unless you want to be as late as Henry is. Goodbye, Mother. Goodbye, Father.
Goodbye, Mary.
Goodbye, Mr. Aldrich.
Goodbye. Charming young woman.
Oh, my goodness, Sam, I hope he'll get over it.
You must remember, however, that someday somebody is going to marry that young woman.
But it certainly isn't going to be Henry.
It would be just our luck to have it be Henry.
Wait for me, Mary. Wait for me.
They've left, Henry.
They left without me?
Well, of course.
Well, goodbye, everybody.
Come back here and eat your breakfast.
But, Mother, do you want me to run right on top of a hearty meal?
I want you to come back to this table.
Where did you find your trousers?
That's the strangest part of it. I found them on a chair in my room.
On a chair.
Yeah.
Henry, where did you meet this Constance?
I was assigned next to her.
Henry, don't you think you should swallow your food before you talk?
Yes, Mother. I'll answer you in just a minute, Father. There. I was assigned next to her.
In what way?
My seat. My seat in assembly.
Oh, I see.
Why were you asking?
I was just wondering, what does her father do?
He's an exterminator.
He's a what?
Just a minute. He's an exterminator.
An exterminator?
No matter what you have, even if it's rats, you call him and he'll get rid of them.
Henry.
That's right, Mother. He'll get rid of any kind of pest there is.
He has never shown any disfavor toward his daughter?
Don't you like Constance?
Henry, in the past, your father and I have always permitted you to know anyone you wanted to. But somehow we don't care for this Connie.
Why not, Mother?
Well, putting it bluntly, you're much too nice for her.
Oh, Mother, don't be absurd. Well, until she came along, I didn't care how I looked. Now look at me. Remember that bunch of hair that always used to stand up? Now I keep it combed down.
And to tell you the truth, I miss that lock of hair. I miss it very much.
You don't think I look improved?
Oh, Henry, dear, when are you coming to your senses?
In what way, Mother?
Well, for 1 week now, you haven't touched your homework. You can't eat your meals.
Well, I don't need food.
Whatever became of Barbara Pearson?
Barbara Pearson.
Of course.
Well, she was all right when I was young, Mother.
You, grew old 7 days ago?
I've certainly changed since then.
In what way, aside from putting Vaseline on your hair?
In a lot of ways, Father.
Well, just remember, son, we wouldn't have you lose your head for anything. Is that clear?
Yes, Father.
Now run on to school.
Yes, sir. Only you've got the wrong idea about Constance.
I'm quite sure one of us has.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. So long.
Sam Aldrich, I'm worried sick.
Oh, Alice, you're worrying about something that's absurd.
Sam, I didn't want to say anything about it before. I usually don't read anything that belongs to Henry, but I picked up a note Constance wrote him, and, Sam, she isn't his kind.
Why didn't you tell me there was more to it?
Well, what I want to know is what we should do.
Give him some castor oil and send him to bed.
Well, that's what I thought you'd say. I know what I am going to do.
What?
I'm going to handle this the way the psychologists say a parent should.
Now, Alice, if I were you, I wouldn't start fooling around with psychology at a time like this.
But it's common sense, Sam. If we forbid his seeing the girl, it's simply a challenge. So the thing for us to do is to tell him that he may see her just as much as he wants to.
Which is what he's doing anyhow.
But we should invite her to dinner, Sam.
Invite her here to dinner?
Well, of course. If he sees enough of her, he'll grow tired of her.
You hope he will.
I'm sure he will. And on next Saturday night, we're having her and some of his other friends here for dinner.
Hiya, Connie.
Henry, do you like my dress?
Yeah, it's very pretty. I've got to see who's at the door.
Oh, I let them in. It was George Bigelow and some other girl.
Oh.
Henry, let Connie straighten your tie.
You always yank it so tight. The other night, I had to go to sleep with it on.
Oh, how do you do, Mrs. Aldrich?
How do you do, Constance? We're very glad you could come.
How do you do?
You'll find my family in the living room. Papa has to leave early.
I'm sorry to hear that.
He's got to go on a big job for somebody.
You don't say so.
This is the third time he's been there. He just nicely gets them out, and they always come back.
Sam, come along.
Henry, wait and talk to Connie.
Yeah, I've got to go and see my guests.
Are they more important than poor little I?
No, but I ought to go in and say hello to them.
Henry, look at me. Oh, you've got the bluest eyes Connie has ever seen in her life.
Yeah?
Excuse me for interrupting.
Oh.
Got something in your eye, Henry?
Gee whiz, Mrs. Sanderson.
Hello, Henry. Henry, you didn't tell me Barbara was coming.
No.
Well, I understood this party was for me. I'm going in the other room and tell your mother what I think of it, Henry Aldrich.
Henry, I know I shouldn't have come. Even if your mother did say I should.
But I'm glad to have you. I'm glad to have both of you.
Well, I'm not staying. I just came to make sure she got here. Where's your mother?
In the next room.
I'll just slip in and say hello. See whether maybe there's a little candy around.
Well, I see Constance has been fixing your tie again.
How can you tell?
It looks so nice. Doesn't look like you.
No?
When I came in, she was just going to straighten your eyes for you, I guess. Wasn't she?
Listen, Barbara, please.
Henry, would you mind very much if I went home?
Henry, aren't you going to come in and join your guests?
Yes, Father, we're coming.
George Bigelow says he hasn't even seen you.
George Bigelow? Henry, I can't go in there.
Why not?
Because I can't. Please let me go, Henry.
But I want you to stay.
Henry, I've got to tell you. Those telephone calls I had from George, they weren't from George at all.
Well, who were they from?
Nobody. I just did it to make you jealous.
Was that your grandmother's idea?
No. It was mine. Wasn't it ridiculous?
Barbara, come in here. They got cakes with every kind of icing you can think of.
No.
Henry, your mother wants you.
I'll be there.
She wants you now, right away.
Yeah, but can't she wait a second?
No. Now then, young lady, if you want Henry Aldrich, you will stay here where you can keep an eye on him.
I'm not going to stay.
You want to upset me even more than I already am?
I can't help it. I'm going home.
Barbara, wait.
No.
Oh, you've got to come in, dear. It wouldn't be a party without you.
Why not?
For any number of reasons.
But look at my eyes. They're a sight.
Tears, my dear, only make you prettier. I know from experience.
Do you really think so?
Sam. You been asleep yet?
Of course.
I've been thinking about that party. And you said I didn't understand psychology.
Well, I didn't say that. I said you were taking a gamble.
Just think we won't have to worry about that awful Constance Marshall or the idea of Henry's ever giving up law or getting engaged before he leaves high school.
I guess sure. Things usually work out for the best. just
Provided
naturally.
you give him a little assistance. By the way, have you heard Henry come in yet?
Don't believe I have.
Oh, my goodness, what time is it?
It's, by the clock on the bureau, it's 10 minutes to 2.
Sam Aldrich, Henry has never stayed out this late before in his life.
I thought you weren't going to worry anymore.
Oh!
Henry, is that you?
Yes.
Where have you been, Henry?
No place. I just walked home with Barbara, and then I had to wait until her grandmother went to bed.
Come in here and say good night to us.
I want to thank you for the swell party. Barbara said she had a very nice time.
Sit down here on the edge of the bed.
Henry, you're sitting right on my ankle.
I'm sorry, Father. I didn't know it was there.
Where did you think it would be?
Henry, move your head over toward the light from the door.
What for?
Oh, Henry, I could almost cry.
Why?
That old lock of hair. It's standing straight up again.
Yeah. She lets me wear my necktie so I can breathe, too. Mother, would you mind my asking right from the shoulder?
What, dear?
Well, would you and Father be disappointed if I didn't study 6 years to become a lawyer?
Why not?
Oh, no particular reason, Father. Just asking.
Henry Aldrich, you aren't thinking of getting married, are you?
Oh, no, Mother, no. We think you should wait until you're at least through high school. Don't you?
Well, Alice, you certainly understand psychology.
Ladies and gentlemen, once there was a husband who was very fussy about his desserts. He liked puddings, but only the kind of puddings that his wife made for him. Well, of course, it's a lot of work to make good puddings, so this man's wife decided to play a little trick on him. What happened? Well, the wife who wrote us about this is right here in person, Mrs. Florence C., who lives at 25 Hillside Avenue, Washington Heights, New York City. Here's your letter, Mrs. C. Would you read us the rest of what you wrote, please?
Certainly, Mr. Von Zell. I decided to try Jell-O chocolate pudding. It only took me a few minutes to whisk it up, and when supper time came, there it was, a big bowl full of rich, creamy, smooth chocolate pudding. Well, my husband came right back for the second helping. Said it was the most delicious pudding I had ever made. So then I told him about it. Told him that I had used the new Jell-O chocolate pudding. He had to admit it surely was a success, every bit as delicious as the old-fashioned kind.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. C. And ladies, that is the way to make a hit with your husband, too. For the new Jell-O puddings have that real old-fashioned goodness. Creamy, smooth, full-flavored, and tempting. But they're far quicker and easier to make. There are 3 delicious Jell-O puddings to choose from. Rich chocolate, mellow butterscotch, and creamy, delicate vanilla. Yes, you like all 3 new Jell-O puddings. Real old-fashioned puddings made a new-fashioned way. So try them tomorrow.
Barbara,
Yes, Henry.
are you sure your grandmother's gone to bed?
Thank heavens she has.
Well, do you mind my asking you something?
What is it, Henry?
Well, would you like to go to a football game with me Saturday?
Of course I would, Henry.
If you go, Henry, I give you the money to get a seat for me.
Well, Grandma's in again. But be sure to tune in again next week for further adventures of Henry Aldrich. The Aldrich Family, starring Ezra Stone, is written by Clifford Goldsmith. Tonight's special guest was Betty Field, star of the stage and screenplay What a Life. And she'll be back with us again next week. Original music is composed and conducted by Jack Miller. Harry Von Zell speaking and wishing you good night for those delicious new desserts all America's talking about. Jell-O pudding.
This is the National Broadcasting Company.
From 84 years ago, October 17th, 1939, the Aldrich Family on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Coming up next, I Was a Convict. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, we moved from an NBC show to a mutual show, I Was a Convict, as it was broadcast 77 years ago today, October 17th, 1946.
Believing that crime takes only a moment to commit, but requires a lifetime to prepare, the Mutual Broadcasting System, in cooperation with the Society for the Prevention of Crime, presents
I Was a Convict.
Bringing you the dramatization of a crime, an interview with the woman who actually committed this crime, followed by questions from the studio audience. And now we go back 8 years to one night in the back room of a small bar. A young woman sits at a table drinking.
Hello, Joe. Are you going to pass up an old drinking companion?
Hiya, Bea. I didn't see you.
Well, sit down.
Okay.
Have a drink.
Nice idea if you let me buy tonight.
That's out.
Look, I don't get it. I don't understand you at all.
Sometimes I don't understand myself.
You're a swell gal, and I like sitting here and talking to you. But you won't ever let me buy you a drink. What's the matter? Is my money poison or something?
I like it this way. That's all.
Yeah, but listen, Bea. I feel like a heel drinking off you all the time. Now, look, I got paid today, see? So tonight, let me buy the drinks.
No, Joe. Put your money in your pocket. It's either my way or you can sit somewhere else.
Oh, but listen, Bea. That doesn't seem
Waiter.
quite... Yeah?
Bring him a double scotch. And bring me a pen and some ink.
I don't know about the pen and ink. Oh, I got a fountain pen if you want to write something. Here you are.
Thanks, Joe. Make it 2 double scotches, waiter.
Okay. You gonna write a love letter, Bea?
No. I wouldn't write a love letter or any other kind of letter to anybody.
Why not? What have you got against the world?
Oh, nothing. Everybody's all right to drink with, but that's all.
Wow, you sound as if you mean it.
I do.
You mean to tell me a swell girl like you doesn't have a boyfriend?
Boyfriend? I had a husband once. Yeah. And a kid, too.
Where are those drinks? Well, I guess it's tough, but things will work out.
Oh, sure, yeah. Things will work out fine.
Okay, double scotches and a bill.
Take it out of this check and bring me the change.
I don't know about the check, lady. I'll see if the boss will okay it.
Now, look, you know me. I've been coming in here for a long time now, and I've cashed checks here before. Now, go ahead. Bring me the change.
Beef, forget about it. I'll pay. I told you I had money.
Quit worrying, Joe. There's plenty more where that came from.
Prisoner will stand to receive her sentence. You have been found guilty of passing a worthless check in the amount of $50. Inasmuch as the court knows something of the circumstances surrounding this crime, and taking into consideration that this is your first offense, I sentence you to an indeterminate term in state's prison for women. However, I am going to suspend sentence and place you in the custody of your father. Is the father of this defendant in court?
I am, Your Honor.
Will you accept the custody of your daughter, sir?
No. She's done wrong and she should be punished. I will not accept the responsibility.
Do you realize what you're saying, sir?
I do. She's no good. I won't have anything to do with her.
Well, in that case, you leave me no alternative. I hereby sentence you to an indeterminate term in state's prison for women, such term to be not more than 5 years. Take her away.
In the studio, we have Miss B, the woman who committed this crime. For her protection, as well as other people concerned, she will be known as Miss B and will not be visible to the studio audience. With Miss B is Edwin J. Lucas, Executive Director of the Society for the Prevention of Crime, who will try to find out what made this woman commit this crime and identify the drive behind this criminal behavior. Mr. Lucas.
Now, Miss B, was that the first crime for which you were convicted?
Yes, it was.
And after your release from prison, when you returned home, what was your father's attitude?
Said I looked very well, and I should have stayed 5 years.
That was a dreadful thing to say. Now, you've been convicted several times since that first conviction, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Suppose you tell us something about those other convictions, Miss B. Tell us about the second time you got into trouble.
The second time was on an invitation to dinner. A friend of ours, a gentleman, was my escort. Before the evening was over, there was a diamond ring missing. This woman, knowing of my record, naturally accused me. I was convicted.
And how long did you serve for that?
18 months.
Well, just before that offense, you forged some checks to the tune of about $1,000, didn't you?
Yes, I did, Mr. Lucas.
What names did you use to sign these checks?
My maiden name and my first husband's.
Oh, yes. Now, how long after your release did you get into trouble again?
I should say about 3 months.
Well, that was the third time, wasn't it? Tell us something about that.
After I left the prison, I found a job that I liked very much, and I intended to keep it. Well, I broke one of the rules of the firm by going out to luncheon with a member of the firm. The boss the next day spoke to me about it and wanted me to identify the gentleman, which I refused. The result was that he asked me very nicely to leave.
What happened then?
There was nothing else that I could see worthwhile staying around for, so I took a trip to Maine. That meant money, and I drank a lot, and forged checks on the way.
I see.
It was brought back and resentenced.
I see. How long did you serve that time?
From 5 to 10, I served 3.5 years.
I see. Now tell us about the last penitentiary sentence that you got.
That penitentiary was for violation of parole, my trip to Maine.
Oh, yes. And how long did you serve this last time?
1 year.
Yes. I gather you've spent most of the last 8 or 9 years in correctional institutions.
That's quite right.
Would you estimate for us the longest period you've been out of an institution in that time?
About 5 months.
Did you spend all of the proceeds of the worthless checks you cashed on drink and on clothes?
No, just drink and jukeboxes.
And jukeboxes. Well, now I'd like to pause here for a moment to point out to the radio audience that in every police station all over the country are hundreds of records of cases like this. But what's missing in these police records is an explanation of why women do these things. And that's precisely our purpose, to find out why, to locate the causes behind this criminal behavior, so that while children are developing, we may recognize the danger signals and do something about them. Now, Miss B, let's turn back the clock. I'd like to discuss your childhood. First, tell me, what kind of a woman was your mother?
Rather domineering. She ran the house. And my father.
Yes. Was she affectionate?
No. Not at all. Very undemonstrative. Not toward any one of us. I mean, there wasn't any favorites. It isn't as though she showed favoritism.
Yes.
It was she just was made that way, and that was all there was to that.
Well, how did you feel about her attitude toward you?
I accepted it. I thought that was part of one's family life. I never can ever remember being jealous of any other little girl having more affection than I. I gave mine to some stray animal, dog or cat or something.
Oh, really?
My only way of just loving something.
Did you bring them into the house?
No, I wasn't permitted to bring them in, to get them off the street.
Didn't you miss your mother's affection?
I knew I missed something. I knew a pat on the head would mean a great deal to me. Oh, just any sort of a caress. I think about it, but then it didn't bother me too much to throw it up.
Of course, we heard how your father behaved on the occasion of your first conviction. But wasn't your father loving and affectionate on occasions?
Not that I ever remember, no.
Did your parents punish you often for mischievous behavior as a child?
No, I seemed to be rather a well-behaved child. I didn't seem to need too many, but what ones I did need, I was told I was going to be punished. And I'd go out and get my own switch and tell the youngsters to wait just a few minutes. I'd be back. I was just going to get a spanking.
Yes.
And forgot about it and came out to play.
I see. Now tell me, did you ever steal when you were a child?
What?
What
Cherries.
happened? Cherries, yes.
From my mother, for pie. She liked them so much, and so I climbed the tree and brought the cherries home for her pie. I got a pat on the head, and it was worth the whole world.
Yes. Did you tell your mother that you had stolen the cherries?
I didn't have to tell her, because she knew we didn't have a cherry tree, so she must have known I got them from someplace else.
And she was loving and affectionate when you brought her cherries for her cherry pie.
Yes, for all the being together.
Well, now, Miss B, I understand you were very fond of music.
That's true.
Did your parents encourage that interest?
Well, they wanted me to play, but never complimented me.
Oh, I see. Now, Miss B, tell us something about your school life. I understand that you attended a boarding school when you were 12. Did you like that? Did you like being away from home?
No, I did not. It's very distasteful.
How often did your parents visit you at school?
Once in 3 years.
Well, why didn't your mother visit you oftener?
Well, the first time she came, I cried and wanted to go home. She never came again. She figured it was easier to call me up on the phone. And then, if I cried, she could hang up.
I see. When you left school, did you have many boyfriends, many beaux?
Yes, quite a few.
Did you bring them home?
No, I was never permitted to bring them only to the door.
Yes.
I couldn't bring them in. And she was very strict about that sort of thing. Inasmuch as if I were invited to a movie, I had to be in at 10 o'clock. As the show was late, she wasn't so willing to accept an answer, an excuse. I danced 12 o'clock, and definitely no automobiles.
I see. Did you have any girlfriends?
Just a few.
Mostly boyfriends?
Mostly boyfriends.
How old were you when you were married?
18.
You told me you didn't love your husband very much.
No, I didn't.
Well, why did you marry him?
Oh, I thought maybe I'd have more freedom if I got away from home. I have a home of my own. I wouldn't have to answer to anyone.
Well, was he a demonstrative husband, a warm and loving husband?
No, he wasn't. He was very cold and undemonstrative in many ways. I have a lot of respect for him, though.
Yes. In the dramatization we heard, Miss B, you were pictured as drinking rather heavily. Well, when did you start to drink?
I was introduced to a doctor by my father. And I had to work for him at one time after the crash in 29.
For this doctor?
Yes. And I started drinking with him, 1, 2, and then it got a little bit more, and that was it.
I wonder if you can tell us how you feel when you drink. You know, liquor does different things to different people. What did it do to you?
Helped me forget everything that was distasteful to me. My childhood, my adolescence, and most of all, my 2 marriages.
Yes. Well, why did you drink only with men, and why did you always insist on treating them?
I liked the company. I was the heavier drinker and drank the most expensive. Therefore, I felt that it was unfair to salaried men to have to pay for my liquor. It was easier for me to pay for theirs.
I see. Now, I wish you'd tell us something about this other man, the one who was first responsible for your drinking. You say you worked for him.
Yes, I did. I disliked him very much.
You came home after these drinking bouts with him, didn't you?
Oh, yes, of course.
Well, how did your husband feel about all of this?
Didn't like it, and told me about it, and told me I could pack up and leave, which I did, and went home to live with Mother.
Yes. Did you or he try to effect a reconciliation later?
Yes, he did 3 different times, but my mother definitely put her foot down on that. And
Your mother put a foot down on it?
Yes.
Well, did you and your husband remain separated?
Yes, we did, and I stayed with Mother.
And then you got a divorce?
That's right.
And then you married this doctor, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Well, how did that marriage work out?
It was very unsuccessful. Physical abuse, and something I wasn't used to. So I finally left again and went home with Mother.
And divorced him, too?
Divorced him, too.
Now, Miss B, you had a daughter by your first husband, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Where was your child all this while? That's all right. Take it easy. Well, she was with your husband, wasn't she? With her father.
Yes, and his people.
Yes. And of course you miss her, don't you?
Very much.
Have you seen her during the past 8 or 9 years?
No, I have not. And when I was released this last time, I was definitely told that I must not interfere and not try to see her in any way.
I see. Well, now, Miss B, we have time for but 1 or 2 more questions. When you cashed these checks at bars where you were known, you knew you'd be caught when the checks were dishonored, didn't you?
Yes, certainly I did.
Did you cash any of these checks when you were sober?
No, I didn't.
You committed the very first of your forgeries following your second divorce, is that right?
That's right, Mr. Lewis.
Well, thank you, Miss B.
Thank you.
I often wish we had time for more details, because, you see, we've had time to touch only the high spots in Miss B's life. But I think we've uncovered the important factors that influenced her behavior. Miss B sought escape from ugly reality by drinking. Alcohol is a favorite device for escape. She also wanted attention from the opposite sex, attention which, from childhood, she lacked. To supply this lack, she sought favor in the eyes of the men whom she treated with the proceeds of the checks she forged. But why was Miss B drinking so heavily? Now, she didn't suddenly explode into drinking and stealing. In her childhood, we find her the victim of an undemonstrative father and an equally indifferent mother, rather. But while they withheld their own love and sympathy, they also surrounded her with a rigid routine. They imposed strict rules on her coming and going. They sent her off to school and then ignored her. They failed to encourage her interest in music. They, especially the mother, even tried to manage the married life of the girl. Now add to all of this the early signs of her normal craving, every child's craving, for attention. She would bring the switch to her mother in order to be whipped for some mischievous act. Even punishment was welcome if it meant some attention. So it was later, when she must have known she'd be punished for issuing worthless checks. Every desperate effort she had made to capture happiness had failed. Her memories of childhood were bitter. Her adolescent experiences far from satisfying. Her adventures in marriage, to put it mildly, were tragic. I doubt that most of us think often about how people like Miss B get that way, about the long, tortured road they travel, from childhood to adulthood, starving from an insufficiency of the things of which good emotional health is made, affection and understanding, and belonging to a happy family unit. For these things, there are no synthetic substitutes. And in the absence of these things in Miss B's life, we discover the source of her later resort to crime.
Ladies and gentlemen, in these last 15 minutes, we have tried to show you some of the causes that led to a criminal career. On the platform with Mr. Lucas are Mrs. Carolyn K. Simon, a trustee of the National Probation Association and a member of the advisory board of the National Committee on the Cause and Cure of Alcoholism, and as a representative of the general public, William Hillman, Mutual Network Washington News analyst.
May I welcome you, Mrs. Simon and Mr. Hillman. Now, certainly during the course of this program, many questions have probably arisen in the minds of the studio audience, and in a moment we'll invite you to submit these questions to open discussion. If anyone has a question to ask, just raise your hand and the microphone will be brought to you. But first, I see that Mr. Hillman has a question.
Yes, I should like to ask this question. I think your analysis is a little bit one-sided.
How?
In this way, and that's the question I'd like to put is this. You say nothing at all for character, nothing at all for the character of a person. In other words, it seems to me, in listening to this particular person's dereliction, I think the trouble arose as much out of character as it did out of circumstances. Why do you stress the circumstances?
Well, Mr. Hillman, if I know what you mean by character, or think I know what you mean by character, I assume you have to do, you're thinking about her control over her behavior. She was either brought up right or she wasn't brought up right. She either had character or she didn't. But you know...
No, may I interrupt there and say that I mean more than that. I mean characteristics with which a person was born.
Well, these characteristics are not characteristics with which she was born. These were developed. These were cultivated over the years as a result of her experiences. And by her experiences, I mean her experiences in her home, in her school, in her neighborhood, with her family, with her friends. And this is what molds character.
Well, she says her father was undemonstrative, her mother was undemonstrative. They certainly were inborn characteristics. And
in the parents, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And she seems to have developed the same characteristic in her attitude toward her child. She was completely indifferent to her own child.
I don't recall having heard a word about her indifference to her child.
Well, I assumed that from the start.
No, Mr. Hillman, no. This child apparently was taken from her pretty early in this series of escapades.
Well, I don't want to take up all this time here. I want to ask one question here. You say she knew she would be punished when she passed the check.
Mm-hmm.
Yet she herself says she passed the checks after drinking. How do you reconcile that?
Well, we didn't hear that she was so drunk that she didn't know what she was doing. I'm not convinced yet that a person isn't aware of some of the things they do while drinking, and Miss B didn't indicate that she didn't know what she was doing. I think the significance of that question and answer has to do with the fact that she was willing to take the risk of punishment to get what she wanted, what she needed at that point.
Personally, and this last question I've been asking at the moment is, don't you think she was just alibying, knowing after all that all the things she was doing was coming from just a fundamentally bad character?
No, I don't think so. I don't think she was either alibying, nor do I think that there was a fundamentally bad character, whatever that means. I don't think there are such things as fundamentally bad characters. I think these things are cultivated, as I said before, by environment. And they're either cultivated in the right direction or the wrong direction, as the case may be. How do you feel about that, Mrs. Simon?
Well, I'm in complete agreement with you as to that. I think it's unfortunate that in this girl's case, not only did she have a father and a mother who were not who weren't developing her toward a sound childhood and adolescence, but she seems never to have met anyone in school or in the community. She never was touched by a Girl Scout group or a campfire group or a YWCA or any teacher who seemed to give her the right reaction, anyone who showed enough interest in her to strengthen that bond that she needed to have to society.
Mr. Lucas, I have a question from the audience. What is your name, please?
Mildred Newman.
And your question?
Why did Miss B sign her father's and ex-husband's name to the checks all the time?
That's an interesting question. I think for this reason. She identified her father's name and her father and her husband's name, her first husband's name, and that husband, with all of her unhappiness. And I think that what she was doing... Maybe she wasn't aware of what she was doing, but I think that what she was doing was this. She was trying to make them pay for her unhappiness.
I have another question here, Mr. Lucas. What is your name, please?
Laura Ecker.
And what is your question?
I wonder why there wasn't an investigation made when the father refused to be responsible for the daughter. It seems that someone should have stepped in at that point, even though there was a trial.
How do you feel about that, Mrs. Simon?
I feel strongly that you're quite right about that. In a well-organized court, at that point, there would have been available to the judge the investigation of a good probation officer who would have shown what her family background was, what her needs were, and would have helped the judge work out a better pattern for the girl. Certainly it was unfortunate that his decision rested on the father's whim.
Yes, I would agree with that, Mrs. Simon.
Well, Mr. Lucas, I'd like to break in again here. I'd like to go back to my point of character, the fundamental character. I watch international events and national events very closely, and I find too frequently these days alibis of action of statesmen and so-called statesmen today is entirely based upon what they call circumstances. Now, it seems to me that it is purely an alibi. There must be something of a moral strength, or there is the evil quality in a person, which accounts for his actions. Don't you agree?
No, I don't agree, Mr. Hillman. I wouldn't know from what source that moral strength, as you call it, would come, except from the things which surround the child. Now, if the child draws moral strength from that environment, all well and good. This girl probably would not have gotten into her difficulty had she been able to draw that strength.
Well, may I ask you this, Mr. Lucas? Haven't you known of families where there may be 2 or 3 sons of fine character, and yet you'll have one black sheep in the family? How do you account for that? All the circumstances are similar under which these children are brought up.
They're seemingly similar, Mr. Hillman. They are not identical. First of all, I don't believe that parents treat their children identically. They think they do, but they don't. And secondly, there is the question of individual reaction to what appear to be the same or identical stimuli. These individual reactions differ. And there is a whole combination of factors that are responsible for that. Is there another question?
I'm sorry, Mr. Lucas, but we must interrupt this time, for we still have to hear from you, and I'm sure you'll tell us how, in your opinion, this crime might have been prevented.
Well, I'll try, and this may answer some of Mr. Hillman's questions. In my opinion, these crimes could have been prevented. Miss B hadn't committed an offense that we know of before she was 30 years old. But there is no doubt that what she did at 30 and thereafter was the product of what was done to her when she was much younger. What a different story she would have to tell today if the people near her had had the foresight, the ability to see that you just can't handle a young girl as Miss B was handled and expect her to come out undamaged. Children are like delicate mechanisms. When people are as impersonal as Miss B's parents were, and at the same time surround a child with all the rigid rules and regulations we might expect to find in an institution instead of a home, then the child is unhappy. And what is worse, much worse, the foundation of her future happiness is shaky. But there was still a way by which Miss B's crimes could have been prevented. If the school to which she had been sent when she was 12 observed how the parents ignored the child, they could have advised the parents of her needs and how those needs could best be satisfied. Miss B sought a means of leaving this home through marriage. This was her first escape. A successful marriage might have been a partial solution to her problem at that point. Had she had a warmly sympathetic and loving husband, a man who offered her the incentive for building together the kind of home she lacked as a child, these things might not have happened. Instead, driven desperately to find an excuse, any excuse, for escape from her unreasonably strict and coldly indifferent mother and father, she chose an equally cold and impersonal husband, which only drove her more desperately to seek a new means of escape. From that point forward, events moved swiftly toward her collapse, and there was nobody near until it was too late to prevent that collapse. There is no magical formula by which people like you and the radio audience, can be helpful in altering the course of the lives of the many Miss B's in preventing their crimes. But there are a few simple rules you might follow. First, you must be interested in doing something about correcting situations like these. If a person you know is sick, you'd not hesitate to find a doctor. If a young person you know is unhappy or neglected or being otherwise badly handled, it's your duty, mind you, as a citizen, as a relative, as a neighbor, to secure referral of that person to agencies in your community. Agencies which are specialists in the welfare of youth. Now, psychiatrists can be enormously helpful. Schools can be, too. So can the church and the settlement house. You say this may be none of your business. And my answer to you is that all children are your business. Your own in particular, your neighbors too. If you pay, as you do through taxes, very heavy taxes, for law enforcement, then you ought to be willing to do everything you can to eliminate the necessity for so much law enforcement by preventing crime before it starts, instead of punishing it after it's committed.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. And to those of you in the radio audience who would like to attend and participate in this program, write for tickets to I Was a Convict, in care of the Mutual Broadcasting System, New York 18, New York. Participating on the program this week with Mr. Edwin J. Lucas were Mrs. Carolyn K. Simon, a trustee of the National Probation Association. William Hillman, Mutual Network Washington News analyst, represented the public. Be sure to listen next week when the Mutual Broadcasting System, in cooperation with the Society for the Prevention of Crime, again presents
I Was a Convict.
The crime program with a purpose, showing that crime takes but a moment to commit, but requires a young lifetime to prepare. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
So using crime as a public service launching point, Mutual, I Was a Convict, from 77 years ago, October 17th, 1946. All right, when Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox continues in just a moment, we will have definitely not a public service. Well, it is a public service because it makes you laugh. Lum and Abner from 82 years ago. That'll be up next.
It's a strange quirk of human nature, but most of us never think, except in the most abstract way, of an accident ever happening to us. It's always the other fellow who's involved. But nevertheless, accidents go right on happening at an ever-increasing, alarming rate. And it can't always be happening only to the other fellow. For instance, 1 out of 5 families will have a traffic accident this year. Think of that. And how can you be sure you won't be that one? Well, there's one way of piling up some percentages in your favor. A few simple precautions will guarantee better accident odds for your family. For one thing, remember it's not always easy to stop quickly in wet weather. Drive so that you can stop when and if you want to. And always drive with a clean, clear windshield. There are a great many safety precautions, and for the most part, it's simply a matter of applying common sense to driving. Just remember to drive as if your life depended on it, because it does.
I will tell you, it surprises me on a wintry morning how many people don't clear their windshield fully. It's amazing. All right, let's wrap up this hour of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox with an episode of Lum and Abner. This goes back 82 years to October 17th, 1941.
The makers of Alka-Seltzer bring you Lum and Abner. You know, friends, I think that one of the reasons why so many of you enjoy these regular radio visits with Lum and Abner is because folks down in Pine Ridge usually take things slow and easy, so differently from the life most of us live in this busy, exciting world these days. We hurry to work in the morning, we hurry through the day, then we hurry through supper, and then we hurry out for the evening to get some relaxation. Well, it's no wonder that headaches, nervous indigestion, and other minor stomach upsets are so common these days. Now, if you're one of those folks who are always on the go, I hope for your sake that you know about Alka-Seltzer. Or if you are Alka-Seltzer wise, you already know how quickly and pleasantly it can make you feel better when some common ache or pain has put you off your stride. And if you don't know from experience how helpful Alka-Seltzer can be, well, don't put off trying it any longer. Take Alka-Seltzer for headaches, for nervous indigestion, sour, upset stomach, heartburn, muscular aches and pains and fatigue, and morning after misery. and you'll feel better fast. Never be without a package of Alka-Seltzer in your home and at your place of work. Get it at any drugstore. And now, let's see what's going on down in Pine Ridge. Well, Lum's scheme to upset Frank Foster's date with Miss Frederick boomeranged and resulted in Frank's driving her to the county seat to the teachers' meeting today. Lum has spent a miserable day lamenting his phony leg fracture, his bad luck, and everything else he can think of. As we look in on the little community now, it is late afternoon. We find Abner in the Jot-'em-Down store trying to get Lum out of his ill humor. Listen.
Well, if you don't quit sitting there fuming and fussing, you're going to work yourself right into a nervous breakdown, Lum.
Well, who wouldn't fume and fuss? Granny's a man can just stand so much of something, and that's all, Abner. Looks like everything I try to do works out right square backwards again me.
Oh, well, you ain't had nothing terrible bad happen to you.
What about my broke leg?
Your leg ain't broke. You just been making out like it was.
That's right, ain't it?
Of course it is.
Granny's, I've wore these splints and bandages on there so long now, I've got to where I believe it myself, even.
Well, you ought to be ashamed of yourself complaining so much, Lum.
What about Frank Foster taking Miss Fredericks into the teachers' meeting today? I guess that was good luck for me.
Well, that was your own fault. You got him to dismiss school so she could go in there.
Yeah, but when I got him to do that, I thought I was going to get to ride in there with her. This dad-blame fake broke leg of mine's the cause of the whole thing. Hadn't it been for it, I could have started right out courting her the day she hit town, and Frank Foster never would have had a chance with her.
Yeah, it slowed you down all right.
Well, I've just put up with it just as long as I'm going to. Ain't but one thing to do, Abner. I've made up my mind. Come on over here and take these bandages off.
Take them off?
Yes, sir. Just start unwrapping them right now.
Lum, you can't do that.
Well, why can't I do it? It's my leg, ain't it?
So what about all these people around here that's been so nice to you because they thought your leg was broke?
Well, I'm just going to tell them the truth and have it over with.
What about that insurance company? What if they find out your leg ain't broke after you sending in a claim for an accident?
Well, I just won't take the money. I'll tell them Squire Skimp sent that claim in. Just tell them the truth about the whole thing. Fact is, I'd rather go to the penitentiary any day than to wear these bandages and splints any longer. Go ahead, start taking them off. I done made up my mind.
All right, that's what you want to do, but I think you're making a mistake.
Just undo that safety pin there. That's where the bandage starts right there.
I'll get it. You're going to have an awful lot of explaining to do, I can tell you that.
Then you just let me worry about that. Take it off before I change my mind now.
What about all these women folks that cooked up victuals and brung over to you?
Yeah, that's going to be bad. Well, I'll just have to face the music, that's all.
Well, I know they're going... Huh?
I say, I've made my bed, now I may as well lay in it.
Oh, thought you said something else. Yeah, well, that's all right, sure. If you're going to get in bed, well, you can pull the cover up over your leg there to where they can't tell where you got these bandages on there or not. But you ought to go home before you take them off, old Lum. Somebody's liable to see you.
Who said anything about going to bed?
Thought you said you was going to get in bed and listen to the radio.
Radio?
Well, where else you going to get any music this time of day?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Didn't you just say you was going home and get in bed and listen to the music?
I said I was going to have to face the music.
Well, if you're facing the radio, naturally you'll have to listen to it.
For goodness sakes, Abner, I ain't going to listen to no radio, and I ain't going home and go to bed.
Well, what's the use in making up your bed if you ain't going to use it?
I never made up no bed.
You said you did.
I never done no such a thing. I said I made up my bed, and now I've got to lay in it. But I ain't going to bed.
Well, how you going to lay in it if you don't go to bed? Oh, you mean just sort of get on top of the covers there with all your clothes on, huh?
For goodness sakes.
Well, I believe it'd be good for you to go over and go to bed for a while, Lum. You're all nervous and upset. I believe a rest would be good for you. If you're just worrying about me running the stores, might not closing time anyway. Facts is, after I close up, I might even come over and listen to the radio with you.
I said I ain't gonna listen to no radio.
Well, what are you gonna do? You change your mind so much I can't keep up with you long.
I'm going to get up from here and try to walk if you'll hurry up and get them bandages off.
All right. I'm nearly done. Just one more round here.
That's good, right
there you are. Now.
Granny, what a relief. I might not feel that leg breathing.
Well, here, you better roll your britches leg down here.
Yeah. Just look at the wrinkles there in that britches leg.
For the land sake.
That ain't a sight. Yeah, I'm going to have to iron that left leg of them britches tonight. Oh, might as well iron both of them while I'm at it, I reckon.
Well, the left one's the one that's wrinkled the most.
Here, let me up. Let me see how it feels to walk again.
Yeah, you've had that thing wrapped up a week now, Lum.
It seems like a month, too. Granny, I don't know if I can walk or not, Abner. Look there how that leg's giving way with me.
Well, I do know.
Wait a minute here. You don't reckon I've sure enough got a broke leg, do you?
I don't know when you could have got it.
That's right, ain't it? I ain't fell down or nothing, have I?
I ain't seen you do it.
Just punishment, I reckon, for going around telling folks it was broke.
You might have strained it trying to make up your bed. Maybe we better put these bandages back on till it gets well on.
No, sir, I wouldn't put them bandages back on there for $1,000 or $100. It's feeling better. The circulation's starting now.
Yes, huh?
Granny's a feller just don't know how to appreciate two good legs until he has to go without one of them, you know?
No. Oh, my goodness, wait a minute. Hide quick, Lum. Hide. Here comes Cedric. We hunt.
Well, I don't care if he sees me. Everybody's going to know it anyway.
Well, I wouldn't want him to be the first one to tell it, though. You know how mixed up he gets on things when he goes to tell them.
Yeah, that's right. I'd better study up some way to break the news to him gentle, hadn't I?
You better. They're going to be mad.
Yeah, hand me that coat there, and I'll sit down and throw that over my leg so he won't notice it.
Yeah. Here, hurry. Put it over. Hurry up.
Get him out here as quick as you can. I want to practice walking some more.
Yeah, I will. Come in, Cedric.
Yeah, howdy, Cedric.
What can I do for you?
Ooh, nothing, I don't reckon. I just wanted to see Mr. Lum a minute. I thought you was running a filling station for Frank Foster today while he taking Miss Fredericks into the county teachers' meeting. Well, I was, but they just got back a minute ago. That's what I come over to tell you, Mr. Lum. I don't reckon I'm supposed to say nothing about it, but Miss Frederick brung you a present back from the county seat. A present? For me? Well, what do you know about that?
How do you know, Cedric?
Well, I just heard her and Mr. Frank talking about it.
Oh, well, what kind of a present is it?
I don't know, but I heard her tell Mr. Frank when she was getting out of the car to hand her that present she brought for Mr. Lum. Well, I do know. Bless her heart. Bless her little heart. That's a gooder known Frank, you know it. Him taking her all the way into the county seat to buy me a present. Bound he's mad enough to buy.
Oh, sure.
I reckon what she's got me.
No telling.
Might be a engagement ring.
Engagement ring?
That's right, she wouldn't buy me one of them, would she?
Of course not.
Must be something for you to use while your leg's broke, Mr. Lum, because I heard her say she felt so sorry for you because your leg was broke. Said she's going to bring it over here to you directly. Going to bring it over here herself? That's what she said. It's the reason I run on ahead so as I could tell you. Oh, my goodness. Well, here, Cedric, sorry you have to leave in such a hurry. Oh, I don't have to go, Mr. Lum. Well, run down there and see if Dick Huddleston's store's open. Well, I know it is. I just come by there. Well, run and see if it's closed then.
I'll go see Lum.
You stay right here, Abner. Run on, Cedric. Yes, Mom, I'll be back in just a minute. Well, you needn't to come back. You can call me from over to the blacksmith shop and let me know. Yes, Mom, I'll hurry.
What do you want to know about Dick Huddleston's store for, Lum?
I wanted to get Cedric out of here so as we can put them bandages back on my leg.
I thought you weren't going to put them back on.
Well, I've changed my mind. I believe this broke leg is a good one, you know it?
Huh?
I believe Miss Frederick's fallen in love with me on account of my broke leg. Buying me presents, coming over here to see me. Hurry up before she gets here.
Oh, my goodness, look yonder. Squire Skimp coming across the street heading this way, Lum.
Well, here, hurry up.
Yeah.
I'll hold the splints and you drop that on there just as quick as you can.
All right. Well, here, hold your foot up there so that I can get to it.
Got it clean up over my head now.
That's good right there. Now hold
Hurry
still. Hold them splints. I'm doing it as fast as I can. Doggies, it ain't a very good problem, but I'm hurrying.
I don't care about that. Just get it on there. He ain't gonna pay no attention to it, no way.
Let's see now. Where's that pen? Oh, yeah. Here it is.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, that's got it right.
Come in, Squire. Come on back.
Well, good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon.
Howdy, Squire.
I just dropped in to leave a package for you, Lum. Miss Frederick, a new school teacher, asked me to bring it over. I saw her down the street there and told her I was coming this way.
Oh, well, much obliged, Squire.
A book, I believe it is.
Book?
Yes, said she knew you'd enjoy it while you were recovering from your unfortunate accident.
Oh, reckon why she never brung it herself.
Well, she said she's in awful hurry, Lum. Didn't want to be late for supper. I think it's kind of a gift of appreciation because we dismissed school today to let her go into the meeting. She brought Ezra and me back one, too.
Oh, she brung you all something back, too, huh?
Yes. Well, I better be going. I'll see. Well, wait a minute.
Huh?
I'll swan to goodness.
What's the matter?
That leg of yours, Lum.
What's wrong with it, besides being broke?
I'd better go back and look at that carbon copy of that insurance claim I sent in for you, Lum.
Why?
You've got your right leg all bandaged up there. I could have sworn I wrote on that claim that it was your left one. Ha!
Say, folks, how many times have you heard someone say, "Oh, for the good old days"? But I wonder, were the good old days so good after all? How would you like, for example, to have to go back to the old-fashioned hit-or-miss methods of relieving cold distress instead of the modern, easy Alka-Seltzer way? For Alka-Seltzer has proven so effective, so pleasant. Well, I tell you, folks, there's just no comparison. For until you've tried it, you have no idea how quickly and how pleasantly Alka-Seltzer offers relief from that aching head and that dull, stuffed-up feeling of a cold. You'll want to use it as a gargle for your sore, raspy throat, too. So be modern, folks, and be wise. The next time you catch cold, take common-sense precautions, get more rest than usual, watch your diet, dress sensibly, and take Alka-Seltzer. See how much better it makes you feel. Get Alka-Seltzer from your druggist now, and be sure to be ready the next time you catch cold.
Oops. October 17th, 1941, Lum and Abner here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Visit our webpage, classicradio.stream. Stream our shows, learn about building a classic radio collection of your own. You can contact me there, find our social media links, and you can buy me a coffee if you enjoy our shows. I would sure appreciate that. Have yourself a great day. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.